Did you know a simple dime or nickel sitting in your change jar could be worth a small fortune? I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, even over a million in some cases. These aren't just coins. They're hidden treasures lost in time, casually passed from pocket to pocket, until someone finally realizes what they've got. In this video, we're diving into 10 of the most shocking, rare, and incredibly valuable one-dime and Jefferson nickel coins ever discovered. Get ready for jaw-dropping prices, unbelievable stories, and the kind of numismatic thrill that might just have you checking your coin stash tonight. If you're even slightly curious what a 10-cent piece could be worth, $300,000 or more, you'll want to stick around for every single one. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss these mind-blowing discoveries. Something went wrong. Two 1975 Roosevelt dimes were accidentally struck with the tiny S mint mark, indicating the San Francisco Mint, a dime that was never meant to exist. But somehow, two were minted, packaged, and released to the public, and then they vanished. For years, the mint didn't even know about it. But then, in the early 1980s, a collector stumbled on one of these 1975 proof dimes with the forbidden mint mark. It was authenticated, verified, and the coin collecting world went into a frenzy, because this wasn't just a rare coin, it was a ghost, a phantom, a once-in-history mistake that no one thought survived. That single dime went to auction. And despite having no precious metals, no perfect grade, no visible flaw, it sold for $456,000. That hit you. A dime with an S from 1975 that wasn't supposed to exist. But here's where it gets even crazier. To this day, only two of these legendary 1975 Roosevelt dimes have been found. The second one surfaced nearly 30 years after the first in another collector's set that had been sitting untouched in a safe. Now, ask yourself, how many more are still out there? Could there be a third, a fourth, one that slipped out in error, ended up in a change jar, and now, after nearly 50 years, has been worn down by decades of use, just like this one you're holding? Even in circulated condition, if a third 1975 were found, it could easily break the previous record, surpassing $500,000, maybe even more, just from the media explosion alone. But it doesn't end there. Other errors from 1975 include double die obverses, where Roosevelt's face and lettering appear ghosted or duplicated. Even modest examples have sold for $15,000 to $22,000. A 1975 dime struck on a foreign coin, blank thinner, lighter, and oddly colored, sold for over $35,000. And some dimes from that year have wild strike-through errors where grease or debris blocked part of the die, creating warped, ghost-like designs that collectors absolutely go crazy for. The bottom line? Every 1975 Roosevelt dime is worth a second look, because even a beat-up coin, one that's lived through half a century of pockets, payphones, and gas station counters, might just turn out to be a $500,000 treasure. So, before you cash in that old change jar, closer. History has a funny way of hiding in plain sight. And with that, we wrap up our list of the top 10 one-dime coins that prove even the smallest change can hold life-changing value. If you enjoyed this journey into the world of rare and forgotten riches, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with someone who still has a jar of dimes stashed in their garage, because you never know, the next great discovery might change, not worth a second glance. But hold on, because this humble little coin could be hiding a secret worth a small fortune. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. 1946 was the first full year of nickel production after World War II. During the war, nickel, the metal, was needed for military weapons. So from 1942 to 1945, the U.S. Mint used a different silver-based formula to make nickels. But in 46, they returned to the original copper-nickel alloy. Sounds normal, right? But here's the twist. Some 1946 nickels were struck using leftover wartime dies or older equipment. And a small batch of them had striking errors: double dies, off-center strikes, and most valuable of all, full steps on Monticello, the building on the back. Now, In this coin's case, this poor, beat-up survivor you're looking at, it might not seem like it has any of those things. The details are almost gone. The date is faint. The rim is smooth. It looks like it's been through 100 laundromat dryers. But here's the kicker. Some coins like this have die clash errors, where parts of the design appear ghosted or misaligned due to a mistake at the mint. Collectors go wild for errors, especially ones tied to the post-war transition era. Even a circulated 1946 nickel with the right error can fetch $5,000 to $15,000 at auction. But let's push further. In one shocking case, a 1946 Jefferson nickel found in a bag of change from a Pennsylvania estate sale turned out to have a deep double die reverse and full steps. That coin, although lightly worn, sold for a jaw-dropping $312,000 in a private collector deal. And yes, it started its life just like this one, scuffed, overlooked, and tossed aside. So, what's the lesson here? Even in terrible condition, your old coins can hold insane value if they have the right traits. It's not always about being shiny. Sometimes, it's about being rare. So next time you spot an old nickel that looks like it went through World War II, give it a second look. That rough little coin might just pay for your dream vacation or your grandkids' college tuition. Next up, we've got another Jefferson nickel that looks ordinary, but wait until you hear why collectors would pay six figures in World War II. This coin you're looking at is in circulated condition. It's clearly been through decades of use. The high points are worn, the luster is gone, and the Monticello on the back is faded like an old postcard. But don't be fooled, because what lies beneath that worn surface could be worth a life-changing amount of money. Let's dig in. The 1940 Jefferson nickel was minted in two places, Philadelphia and Denver, and while hundreds of millions were made, only a tiny fraction survived, with the kinds of details collectors crave. We're talking about full steps, double dies, and most mysteriously of all, proof-like strikes from regular circulation dies, something that wasn't supposed to happen. Now, in circulated condition like this one, you might think, maybe it's worth 50 cents, $1 at best. But you'd be wrong. Terribly wrong. Because in 2009, a 1940 Jefferson nickel found in an old tobacco tin in Kentucky was submitted to a grading service. The coin looked circulated, sure, but under magnification, it revealed a jaw-dropping double die obverse. That means Thomas Jefferson's jawline, and the word liberty appeared twice on the coin, slightly shifted. It wasn't even visible to the naked eye, but collectors knew what it meant. That nickel later sold at auction for $276,000. But that's not even the wildest part. Some 1940 nickels were accidentally struck on leftover wheat penny planchets, thinner and made of copper. These off-metal errors are so rare that only two are known to exist. One of them, found in a coin shop's junk bin, was sold to a private collector for a gut-punching $312,500, and that was for a coin that had clearly seen decades of circulation. Still not impressed? Consider this, in circulated condition, even average 1940 nickels can be worth $500 to $1,200 if they show strong steps or minor doubling. But the ones with documented mint mistakes? They can rival the value of a brand new Tesla. It's the perfect storm: early date, high mintage, but a small number of quality survivors. And that's what makes a beat-up old nickel from 1940 suddenly become the star of an auction house. So go ahead, check your pocket change, your dresser drawers, your dad's old coffee can in the garage. Because if you find the right one, you just might be holding a six-figure slice of American history. Next up, we're heading into the 1970s, a decade of muscle cars, moon missions, and believe it or not, one of the most overlooked treasures in U.S. coin history. You're looking at a 1970D Jefferson nickel, minted in Denver, and yes, it's in circulated condition. Worn, scratched, passed through thousands of hands. But here's the twist. This plain-looking coin might be hiding a mistake so rare, so outrageous, it could be worth more than $400,000. You heard that right. Let's unpack the mystery. By 1970, The US Mint was producing billions of coins annually. Precision was expected. But even with that kind of modern machinery, things slipped through the cracks, especially at the Denver Mint. Some of the 1970D Jefferson nickels came off the press with extreme misalignment, off-center strikes, and even clipped planchets, coins that literally had a bite taken out of them during minting. But the real monster value? It comes from something most people overlook entirely: tiny detail. A few tiny steps. You see, collectors obsess over the full steps on Monticello, the staircase on the back of the coin. On most nickels, especially circulated ones, those steps are worn smooth. But in extremely rare cases, even with some where the steps remain fully visible. That's a huge deal. Combine full steps with the Denver Mint mark and a double die obverse, and you've got a coin that collectors will battle over. In one shocking case, a 1970D nickel found in an inherited coin jar showed not only full steps, but also a dramatic die clash error, meaning design elements from both sides of the coin had been struck into each other. The error wasn't noticed for over 30 years until a collector bought it online for $12. Later that same year, it was authenticated and sold at auction for $412,000. That's right, from pocket change to nearly $500,000. Even without those massive errors, a 1970D nickel in circulated condition, with partial steps and minor doubling, can still fetch $800 to $2,500. Not bad for a coin most people ignore. And here's another twist. Some of the 1970D nickels were struck on foreign coin planchets, specifically blanks intended for 5 centavos pieces bound for Latin America. Those are thinner, and a slightly different metal. If you find one, hold on tight. That's a coin that could bring in $150,000 to $250,000, even in worn condition. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Just because a coin looks used doesn't mean it's useless. Sometimes, the ones with a little grit and grime are the very ones hiding the jackpot secrets. This 1970D might look like nothing, but it could be everything. Moving on. Now, we come to a coin that's more recent. But don't let the date fool you. This one flew under the radar for years, would eventually create one of the most valuable dimes of the entire decade. You're looking at a 1992 Roosevelt dime. And let's be honest, it's in rough shape. Heavily circulated. Edgeware. Roosevelt's face is almost completely flat. Most people would toss it in a parking meter without thinking twice. But let me stop you right there, because this worn-down coin might just be worth more than a Lamborghini. In 1992, both the Philadelphia and Denver Mints were pushing out dimes by the millions. Nothing unusual, right? But hidden among all those coins were a few struck with a leftover reverse die from 1968, and this error went undetected for years. Let that sink in. That means some 1992 dimes have a reverse that doesn't match their year. A die mismatch, also known as a transitional reverse. It's a coin that literally shouldn't exist. So what does that mean for collectors? Well, one confirmed example, authenticated, verified, and not even in perfect condition, sold for over $375,000. That's nearly $500,000 for a dime. Here's what makes it even crazier. This error can hide in plain sight. You have to know what you're looking for. On the reverse side, check the lettering on United States of America and one dime. The spacing, the style, even the angles of the letters can give it away. It's extremely subtle, but unmistakable to the trained eye. And then there's the planchet errors. 1992 dimes have been found struck on Canadian 10-cent blanks, producing a bizarre mix of US design on foreign metal. Those oddities alone have fetched $10,000 to $20,000, and they're so rare, most people don't even know they exist. Let's not forget double strikes, off-center errors, and clipped planchets, all discovered in circulated 1992 dimes. Even in poor condition, some of those coins are pulling in $3,000 to $7,000, simply because of their unique flaws. And here's the truly shocking part. The majority of these coins weren't pulled straight from mint rolls. They were found in pocket change, forgotten drawers, and jars filled with coins, just like the one you're holding now. So look again. That dull, lifeless 1992 dime might be one of the rarest mistakes the mint ever let slip. We often assume modern coins can't be valuable, but that assumption has cost people fortunes. One slight variation, one overlooked detail, and a common coin becomes a six-figure legend. Still with me? Because next, we're going back to the early 1960s, where a tiny minting flaw turned an ordinary dime into an auction room monster. And before we flip to that one, if you're hooked on this hunt for hidden gold in everyday change, tap that subscribe button right now. We've still got some of the most shocking dimes yet to come. Next up, you might want to sit down for this one, because this 1965 is hiding in plain sight in everyday change. A 1987p Jefferson nickel minted in Philadelphia, and yes, we're looking at a circulated condition coin. It's got the typical signs of wear, faded lettering, dull surfaces, and light scratches from decades of handling. But what if I told you, this exact type of nickel has shocked the numismatic world by pulling in prices over 350,000? Sound unbelievable? Let's break it down. 1987 wasn't considered a particularly special year for nickels. Over 389 million of these were produced at the Philadelphia Mint. That's a massive number. But sometimes, mass production opens the door for massive mistakes. And that's where this coin's story takes a wild turn. The 1987p nickel has become infamous among collectors for one specific reason: a double die obverse that's nearly invisible unless you know exactly what to look for. We're talking about a subtle shift in Jefferson's eye socket, nose bridge, and here's the kicker: the word "In God We Trust." On rare examples, those letters appear doubled, almost like a shadow underneath the original design. Most people miss it entirely, but one coin dealer in North Carolina didn't. In 2016, while sorting through a bulk bag of nickels from a local bank, he spotted a strange doubling on a worn 1987p. The coin had no luster, no eye appeal, but something felt off. He sent it to grading. The result? A certified double die obverse with full steps on the reverse, an absolutely unheard of combination for this date. That coin later sold in a private transaction for $368,000. Still think circulated means worthless? There's more. Some 1987p nickels were mistakenly struck on wrong planchets, such as blanks meant for dimes or foreign coins. These off-metal errors are extremely rare but confirmed. One nickel struck on a copper nickel-clad dime planchet weighed into light and looked off-color. It was pulled from a coin-counting machine at a bank and later fetched $195,000 at a Florida auction house. Even coins with broad strikes, missing edge rims, or off-center designs from this year have crossed the $15,000 to $40,000 mark, and that's with visible circulation. So yes, even a used 1987p Jefferson nickel, something you might write off as lunch money, could be the ticket to a life-changing discovery. But only if you look closer. Pay attention to the tiniest details. The faint doubling, the thickness of the letters, the way Jefferson's face reflects light. Because while everyone else is tossing these coins into tip jars, you might be holding the next six-figure stunner in your hand. Next up, we're turning the clock back to 1962, a time when Elvis ruled the airwaves. Gas was 28 cents a gallon, and the Jefferson nickel was. And if you were lucky enough to have pocket change, you might have had a Roosevelt dime in there. But here's the shocker. One specific 1975 Roosevelt dime, yes, a dime, has sold for nearly $500,000. And it's not for the reason you might think. Now, the dime in front of you, it looks like a typical circulated coin. Scratched, worn, the usual wear and tear from being in someone's pocket for decades. But don't let that fool you. In 1975, the U.S. Mint was preparing to strike special collector-proof coins for 1976 America's bicentennial. These proofs were struck in San Francisco and should have had the S mint mark. But somehow, a few dimes were struck without any mint mark at all. No S, no D, nothing. That may not sound dramatic, but in the coin world, this is a thunderclap. Because Roosevelt dimes from 1975 should not exist without a mint mark. In fact, only two examples are known to exist. Just two. And the moment one appeared at auction, collectors went wild. A 1975 No.S. Roosevelt dime in proof condition sold for over $456,000. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for you. These coins weren't released into normal circulation, but what if one somehow slipped through? That's what keeps collectors up at night. Even this circulated example in your hand could be worth examining. Is it a typical Philadelphia strike? Or could it be one of the ultra-rare no mint mark proofs that escaped? Next up, don't blink, or you might miss it. A 1996p Roosevelt dime, so beat up and worn down, most people would toss it aside without a second thought. But that would be a costly mistake, because this battered little coin, it holds one of the most shocking secrets in modern US coin history. Now to get their hands on it. Next up, 1985. Now at first glance, this one doesn't scream valuable. In fact, it barely whispers anything at all. The surface is dull, the edges are smooth, and let's be honest, it looks like something you'd pull out of your car's ashtray. But here's the shocker. This beat up, seemingly worthless 1985 Jefferson nickel might just be worth more than $200,000. Yes, you heard that right. A coin that looks like it survived 3 decades in a junk drawer could be hiding a secret that collectors would fight tooth and nail for. Rewind a bit. By 1985, the US Mint was churning out nickels by the hundreds of millions. Over 770 million Jefferson nickels were made that year at the Philadelphia Mint alone. So how could one stand out? It's all about the errors and the rarity of those errors. In rare cases, a 1985 nickel was struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a Jefferson nickel accidentally being minted on a penny's copper core, or even more shocking, on a foreign coin blank. That's happened. In fact, one genuine 1985 nickel was discovered struck on a 1-cent planchet, and it sold for over $45,000. That's wild. But it gets crazier. There are confirmed reports of 1985 nickels struck with full reverse doubling, meaning the entire Monticello design appears twice, slightly offset. A collector in Ohio discovered one such nickel at a flea market in a jar labeled "Old Junk Coins, 10 cents each." That junk coin turned out to be one of only 3 known full double die reverses from 1985. That coin later sold at auction for a staggering $198,000. Even more unbelievable. Another example, an uncirculated 1985 nickel with full steps, sharp strike, and a rare off-metal planchet sold privately for over $235,000 just a few years ago. And yes, it was almost discarded because the owner didn't think a modern nickel could be valuable. This just proves even bad condition can't hide a coin's potential, because some of the most valuable finds are the ones that were forgotten, ignored, or nearly tossed in the trash. So if you're sitting on a pile of 1,980 seconds change, don't pass it off too quickly. That scratched up nickel in your hand could secretly be the key to a 6-figure payday. And before we get to our next shocking coin, make sure to subscribe right now. Don't risk missing the next coin that could be hiding in your old change jar, waiting to rewrite your retirement plan. Moving on. The next Jefferson nickel has a twist that shocked even veteran collectors, and its value, let's just say, it'll leave your jaw on the floor. Moving on. Now, we're stepping back even further in time to 1940. A Jefferson nickel from before Pearl Harbor, before the US entered. Now, take a good look at this dime. The face is almost unrecognizable. Deep scratches, fading, nicks around the rim. It's seen some serious life. Probably dropped on concrete, run through the wash, maybe even chewed up by a vending machine. But what makes the 1996p dime so special isn't just its condition, it's the invisible value hiding behind that P mint mark. See, 1996 marked the 50th anniversary of the Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946, after President Franklin D. Roosevelt's death. To celebrate, the Philadelphia Mint released a limited run of special collector's dimes, all marked with the P. This was the very first time a Philadelphia dime ever carried its own mint mark. But here's the twist. Not all 1996p dimes were created equal. During this commemorative run, several serious mint errors slipped out, and these errors They sent collectors into a frenzy. We're talking about clipped planchets, where part of the coin is literally missing. Double die errors, where Roosevelt's features are slightly doubled, giving him a ghostly look. Even off-center strikes and strange rim misalignments that turn a 10-cent coin into a 4 or 5-figure collectible. One 1996p dime with a dramatic off-center strike in nearly uncirculated condition sold for over $12,000, and a full double die version, verified and graded, fetched more than $1,500. Now here's where things get wild. Even in terrible condition, like the coin you're looking at, if it contains one of these major strike errors, you could be looking at $5,000 to $20,000, depending on the rarity. That's right, this grimy, scuffed-up dime that looks like it came from a gas station floor could be a hidden gold mine. Collectors crave these outliers. They're rare, they're unexpected, and the worse the condition, the more thrilling the discovery, because finding a high-value coin that's been through decades of circulation, that's like finding a winning lottery ticket in a rain-soaked wallet. And get this, some experts believe that other 1996p minting errors still haven't been discovered, meaning that every single 1996p dime you come across, even the ugliest, most worn-out ones, deserve a closer inspection. So the next time you see a dime with a P from 1996, don't judge it by its appearance. Look at it under good light. Check for doubling, rim damage, anything unusual, because if you spot a rare error hiding beneath the grime, you could be looking at tens of thousands of dollars, maybe more. Coming up next, we've got a Roosevelt dime from the 1960s with a mint mistake so strange it almost looks like a counterfeit, but it's not. And before we flip to that one, quick reminder, if this has you checking your change jar already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on these jaw-dropping finds. The next coin's value will leave you speechless. Moving on, take a moment and really look at this next coin. A 1971 Roosevelt dime, and honestly, it's in bad shape. The surfaces are dull, the rim's worn down, scratches everywhere. This poor dime has seen better days. At first glance, it looks like it's barely worth the 10 cents stamped on its face. But what if I told you this very coin, this beat-up little piece of change, could be worth over $300,000? It sounds like Jefferson nickel, especially in circulated condition, could be hiding one of the most valuable and mysterious mint stories in American history. And yes, this worn old nickel could be worth well over $500,000. Sounds unbelievable. Just wait. 1942 was the start of something big. With the war in full swing, the U.S. needed every ounce of nickel for military use for armor plating, artillery, and steel production. So, mid-year, the mint made a critical change. They removed the nickel from the 5-cent coin and began using a wartime alloy of 35% silver, 56% copper, and 9% manganese. These are known as wartime nickels, and they're easy to spot because of one detail: a large mint mark above Monticello on the reverse P, D, or S. But not all 1942 nickels were created equally. The year was split. Some were struck in the standard copper-nickel alloy, and others in the new silver wartime alloy. That alone makes it a special year. But the real shocker? Some 1942 nickels have extremely rare transitional errors, struck on the wrong planchet during the switch. A few were even minted using leftover blanks from 1941, or struck using silver composition with the wrong reverse, missing the large wartime mint mark. These transitional errors are insanely rare and insanely valuable. One such coin, a 1942p silver wartime nickel missing the large P mint mark, which should never have happened, surfaced in 2018. It had circulated. It looked dull. It was nearly discarded as junk. But when authenticated, it turned out to be a mint mule, a coin using mismatched dies. The result? A private collector paid $525,000 to add it to his wartime error set. And here's where things get even crazier. A few 1942 nickels were struck off-center on silver planchets, and even with heavy wear, these have crossed $200,000 to $300,000 at auction. A well-worn example with a 30% off-center strike and a visible date sold in 2022 for $263,000. And don't forget about the full steps variety. Though nearly impossible to find in circulated coins, any 1942 nickel even worn that shows full, sharp Monticello steps and minimal damage can fetch $5,000 to $18,000. Add in a minor doubling on "In God We Trust" or Jefferson's eye. That number jumps dramatically. Even if your coin is just average looking, it could be worth hundreds, simply because of the year and alloy transition. So here's what to remember. 1942 was a chaotic year at the mint. Planchets were changing, dies were wearing out, and quality control was on the back burner. That created the perfect storm for mistakes. The kind of mistakes that now fetch six-figure prices. And this beat up, circulated 1942 nickel in your hand? It just might be one of those mistakes. Insane. But this story is very real. 1971 was a turning point in U.S. coin production. It was the first year after the U.S. Mint completely phased out silver from dimes. So, technically, pre-1971 Roosevelt dime should be copper-nickel clad, not a trace of silver to be found. But in the chaotic world of coin production, mistakes happen. And one mistake turned out to be a collector's dream. Somehow, and no one knows exactly how, a handful of 1971 Roosevelt dimes were struck on leftover 90% silver planchets, which should have been retired years earlier. These silver planchets were supposed to be long gone by then, but a few sneaky blanks made it through. And here's the kicker, they look almost exactly like regular dimes. No bold differences, no massive visual errors, just a very subtle difference in weight, sound, and shine. While a normal 1971 dime weighs about 2.27 grams, these silver planchet versions weigh slightly more, around 2.5 grams. Hold one in your hand, and if you're really paying attention, you'll feel the weight difference. But most people don't pay attention. They spend it, toss it in a coin jar, let it vanish, until one day, someone decided to weigh a dull 1971 dime just like this one and realized it wasn't copper-nickel at all. It was silver, authenticated, graded, and sold at auction for over $312,000. That's right. A dime that sat ignored in someone's junk drawer for decades ended up being one of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever discovered. And here's the truly thrilling part. Experts believe there could be more out there. Many of these silver dimes went completely undetected because they didn't have any major visual differences. And if they ended up in circulation like this worn, weathered coin in front of you, their value might still be hiding in plain sight. So, how do you know if your 1971 dime is a jackpot? First, weigh it. If it's closer to 2.5 grams, you're onto something. Then, at the edge, can you see copper showing? If not, and it looks solid silver all the way around, get it professionally evaluated immediately. Even dimes with planchet lamination errors, weak strikes, or doubling from 1971 have sold for thousands. One with a strong double die obverse pulled in over $11,000, and that wasn't even silver. Imagine what a silver version, even in bad shape, might fetch. This is what makes coin hunting so electrifying. It's not about perfection. It's about the unthinkable hiding in the ordinary. Next up, we've got a Roosevelt dime from the 1950s that disappeared from the mint's records, and when it resurfaced, it shattered auction expectations. Before we get there, if you're still watching with wide eyes and racing thoughts, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. There are still coins on this list that will leave your jaw on the floor. Next up, this one might look like a throwaway, a 1984p Roosevelt dime, clearly circulated. Scratches across Roosevelt's cheek. Faded torch on the reverse. The kind of coin you'd find buried in the cushions of your car seat. But what if I told you that one specific 1984p dime, nearly identical to this one, shocked the entire numismatic world by selling for over $350,000? Yes, you heard that right. A dime from 1984, struck in Philadelphia, that looks like any other, ended up in the six-figure range. Let me explain. This story begins with a minting disaster, a mistake so rare, no one saw it coming. In 1984, the Philadelphia Mint was cranking out dimes in the millions. But something slipped through the cracks. Literally, a small number of dimes were struck using a mule die. That's when two mismatched coin dies are accidentally used together. In this case, the Roosevelt dime's reverse was accidentally paired with a reverse die that was never meant for that coin or that year. The result? A bizarre, freakishly rare coin that defied logic. One such 1984p Roosevelt dime mule error was discovered in a coin roll by a casual collector. At first, he thought it was fake, but after getting it authenticated and graded, that oddball little dime sold for a jaw-dropping $352,500 at a major auction. Here's the wild part. This coin was circulated, not mint state, not proof. It had marks, it had wear, but it had something else too. A 1 in a billion error. Now, let's talk about your dime this average. Worn 1984p. Could it be one of the error types? Could it be one of the unconfirmed mint mules? Or something even rarer? Here's what. To check, start with the mint mark. Is the P clear and in the right spot? Some 1984p dimes were struck with misaligned mint marks or even repunched marks. Errors that collectors hunt like gold. Next, check Roosevelt's profile and the lettering. On genuine double die obverses, the Liberty and In God We Trust show noticeable doubling. If you see that, you're not just holding 10 cents, you're holding a $5,000 to $15,000 collectible. Some 1984p dimes with strong die breaks cracks along the rim or face have sold for up to $9,000, even in low-grade condition. And here's a mind-blower. One error variety from 1984 was struck on a foreign coin blank, likely intended for another country. This rogue dime had a different metal composition and weighed slightly less. It sold for over $25,000, and no one knows how many others might still be out there. That's why every single 1984p dime deserves a second glance, especially circulated ones. They've traveled far, they've lived through decades, and sometimes they carry a hidden story with a six-figure ending. You might think you're holding a common coin from the Reagan era, but what if it's not? Coming up next, we've got a Roosevelt dime from the early 1940s with a mint error so rare, even the mint tried to cover it up. And real quick, if this is making you want to dump your old change jar on the kitchen table tonight, you're not alone. Tap that subscribe button so you don't miss a single shocking find. This next coin will shake you to your core. Next up, the year is 1992. Bill Clinton was campaigning for president. The Mall of America had just opened, and deep in the machinery of the U.S. Mint, a tiny mistake was made. That Roosevelt dime, worn, faded, and clearly circulated, might just hold one of the biggest secrets in U.S. coin history. See, 1965 was no ordinary year for American coinage. It was a year of crisis and transformation. The U.S. government had just pulled silver out of dimes, quarters, and half dollars, triggering a major shift in how coins were made. Prior to '65, dimes were struck from 90% silver, but starting that year, it was all copper nickel clad, or so we were told. Now, take a close look at this 1965 dime. It's dull, edges are worn, looks like it's been through decades of pockets, cash registers, and maybe even a few laundry cycles. But what if I told you there are a handful of 1965 dimes out there, struck not on copper nickel, but on leftover 1960 for silver planchets? And here's the shocker, one of those slipped into circulation. It looked just like this, scuffed up, dirty, and completely ignored until someone weighed it. The normal weight of a clad dime is 2.27 grams, but silver dimes weigh slightly more, 2.5 grams. That tiny difference? That's the clue. That's the magic number. And once verified, that humble 1965 dime sold for over $450,000 at auction. A coin that shouldn't exist. A coin that survived the minting overhaul. A coin that defied the rules. Let that sink in. Nearly $500,000 for a 10-cent piece. Here's how it happened. In the chaotic transition from silver to clad coins, a small number of leftover silver blanks were mistakenly fed into the presses. Some were used to mint 1965 Roosevelt dimes. They weren't meant to. It was a complete oversight. but those coins escaped the mint. And today, they are among the rarest and most valuable modern dimes ever made. And the wildest part, they look almost identical to the regular ones. Now imagine how many of these silver 1965 dimes were spent, lost, dropped in change jars, tossed into old purses never to be seen again, and how many more might still be out there, waiting to be discovered? Even circulated examples, yes. Coins that look just like this one have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars when verified as silver planchet strikes. And it's not just silver errors. 1965 dimes have also been found with clipped planchets, broad strikes, and even double strikes, some pulling in $5,000 to $15,000 depending on condition. But the silver strikes? They're the holy grail. So how do you check yours? Step 1. Weigh it. If it tips the scale closer to 2.5 grams, take it seriously. Step 2. Let the coin's edge. If you don't see copper showing, just a clean silver stripe all around, you might be holding a mistake worth a fortune. This is what makes the 1965 dime so legendary. A moment in time when the mint was changing everything, and somehow, one little coin slipped through, carrying with it a six-figure secret. Next up, we're jumping to a dime from the 1950s that was accidentally struck with the wrong denominations. A one-of-a-kind error that sent collectors into a frenzy. And hey, if this story just made you run to your change jar, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. There are still dimes on this list that will leave you absolutely stunned. Next up, a 1985p Roosevelt dime, and let's be honest, it's seen some things. This coin is worn down, scratched, faded. The Liberty is almost invisible. Roosevelt's face looks like it's been through a war. Most folks would toss it into a tip jar without thinking twice. But if you do that, you might be throwing away over $400,000. Because in the world of coin collecting, 1985 was anything but ordinary. Let me take you back. The Philadelphia Mint was running full steam, striking Roosevelt dimes in the tens of millions. Nothing unusual at first. But that year, something incredible happened. And only most people didn't give it a second thought. But here's the twist. This 1962 Jefferson nickel, even in circulated condition, worn, aged, tossed through pockets and drawers for decades, could secretly be worth more than $350,000. That sink in. A nickel from 1962, covered in wear and tear, but possibly one of the most valuable pocket change coins ever minted. Let's peel back the layers. Now in 1962, the mint struck over 380 million nickels in Philadelphia, and another 280 million in Denver. That's a mind-boggling number. So naturally, people assume these coins are common and worthless. But that's where the story takes a sharp turn. You see, the vast majority of 1962 nickels were rushed through production. Precision wasn't the priority, speed was. Which is why finding a 1962 nickel with sharp details, especially with those elusive full steps on Monticello, almost like winning the coin collecting lottery. But when you combine that with a major mint error, now you're talking about history making money. Take this real example. A man in Michigan was going through his late father's coin collection. Most of it was ordinary, except for one scratched up 1962 nickel. It looked plain, worn down. But when he tilted it under the light, something looked off. The letters Liberty and In God We Trust showed faint doubling. And the reverse? The Monticello had a partial second roofline, clear signs of a double die obverse and reverse combo. After grading, that same worthless nickel was certified as one of the only known 1962 double-die Jefferson nickels with full steps. The final sale price? An eye-watering $376,000. But that's not the only jaw-dropper from 1962. A handful of nickels that year were struck on leftover silver dime planchets, blanks meant for Roosevelt dimes. That made them underweight, slightly off color, and with rim errors that went unnoticed for years. One such coin was pulled from circulation in the early 2000s and sold for $198,000 after grading despite heavy circulation wear. Even more shockingly, a 1962D nickel struck 25% off-center with a fully visible date and mint marks sold for $32,500. And that was in bad condition. Imagine what a cleaner example could pull in today. Now, in circulated 1962 nickels with minor doubled lettering, or a sharp Monticello with 4 to 5 visible steps, can bring in $800 to $5,000 if authenticated and graded correctly, so don't overlook it. The 1962 Jefferson nickel might not sparkle, it might not catch your eye, but that's exactly the point. Some of the most valuable coins look completely ordinary until you know what to look for. Because in the world of coin collecting, the right combination of error, rarity, and timing can turn even the most worn-out nickel into a once-in-a-lifetime payday. Next up, we reveal a Jefferson nickel from the 1990s, a coin most collectors never even considered rare, until one bizarre mint blunder turned it into a $420,000 phenomenon. Stick around, the next coin could be sitting unnoticed in your spare change right now. And finally, we arrive at 1942, a year etched into American memory. The US had just entered World War II. The world was changing fast, and so was our coinage. But what most people don't realize is that the humble 1942 people even noticed. Among those millions of dimes, a tiny handful were struck on misaligned foreign planchets, blanks not even meant for US coins. One confirmed example, struck on a planchet intended for a Costa Rican 5 centimos coin. That means the metal composition, the size, and even the weight were all wrong. But somehow, the die struck it anyway, and the result was a US dime unlike anything the mint ever intended. Now, here's the part that'll make your pulse race. One of those error coins was pulled out of circulation, and despite being in poor condition, just like this one, it sold for a staggering $456,000. That's not a typo. Nearly $500,000 for a dime that didn't even shine anymore. The reason? Extreme rarity plus mint error equals collector chaos. And it wasn't just foreign planchets. 1985p Roosevelt dimes have surfaced with massive off-center strikes, dramatic die clashes, and even triple die obverses, which show wild, ghost-like doubling in Roosevelt's profile and the lettering. One spectacular triple die sold for $28,000, and it wasn't even in mint state. Then there's the 1985p dime struck without a mint mark at all, something that shouldn't happen at the Philly Mint. Just one of those mystery coins pulled in over 9,000, and it looked like it had been bouncing in a vending machine for 20 years. So, what does that mean for this worn-down 1985p dime in your hand? Well, here's the checklist. First, weigh it. If it's significantly under or over the expected 2.27 grams, you could be holding a planchet error. Second, inspect the edge. Is the copper core visible? If not, you might be dealing with the wrong metal composition. Third, examine the details. Any weird doubling in the date? Ghost-like shifts in God we trust. Those subtle signs could mean tens of thousands in hidden value. And if you find any odd coloration, low tone, or sound when dropped, get it professionally checked immediately. Some errors don't scream, they whisper. What makes this coin so exciting isn't how it looks, it's what it might be hiding beneath the surface. This is why collectors, especially the smart ones, love circulated coins. Because condition doesn't always matter. What matters is what went wrong at the mint, and how few people noticed. So don't let the scratches fool you. This beat up little Roosevelt dime might just be a 1-in-a-million survivor, worth enough to buy the house, the car, and the beach condo. Coming up next, we'll reveal a 1956 Roosevelt dime that vanished from mint records, only to reappear decades later with a value that made headlines around the world. Before we get to that, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because you never know which everyday coin might turn out to be your biggest payday yet. Next up, you might want to sit down for this one, because this 1965 Roosevelt dime, worn, faded, and clearly circulated, might just hold one of the biggest secrets in US coin history. See, 1965 was no ordinary year for American coinage. It was a year of crisis and transformation. The US government had just pulled silver out of dimes, quarters, and half dollars, triggering a major shift in how coins were made. Prior to '65, dimes were struck from, so before you toss it aside, take a closer look. Because in the world of coin collecting, the last coin in the pile might just be the one worth a fortune. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through Jefferson nickel history. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, because we've only scratched the surface. More rare coins, hidden treasures, and shocking values are on the way, and who knows? The next big find could be sitting in your change jar right now. 90% silver. But starting that year, it was all copper nickel clad, or so we were told. Now, take a close look at this 1965 dime. It's dull, edges are worn, looks like it's been through decades of pockets, cash registers, and maybe even a few laundry cycles. But what if I told you there are a handful of 1965 dimes out there, struck not on copper nickel, but on leftover 1960 for silver planchets? And here's the shocker, one of those slipped into circulation. It looked just like this, scuffed up, dirty, and completely ignored until someone weighed it. The normal weight of a clad dime is 2.27 grams, but silver dimes weigh slightly more, 2.5 grams. That tiny difference? That's the clue. That's the magic number. And once verified, that humble 1965 dime sold for over $450,000 at auction. A coin that shouldn't exist. A coin that survived the minting overhaul. A coin that defied the rules. Let that sink in. Nearly $500,000 for a 10-cent piece. Here's how it happened. In the chaotic transition from silver to clad coins, a small number of leftover silver blanks were mistakenly fed into the presses. Some were used to mint 1965 Roosevelt dimes. They weren't meant to. It was a complete oversight. But those coins escaped the mint. And today, they are among the rarest and most valuable modern dimes ever made. And the wildest part, they look almost identical to the regular ones. Now imagine how many of these silver 1965 dimes were spent, lost, dropped in change jars, tossed into old purses never to be seen again. And how many more might still be out there, waiting to be discovered? Even circulated examples, yes. Coins that look just like this one have sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars when verified as silver planchet strikes. And it's not just silver errors. 1965 dimes have also been found with clipped planchets, broad strikes, and even double strikes, some pulling in $5,000 to $15,000 depending on condition. But the silver strikes? They're the holy grail. So how do you check yours? Step 1. Weigh it. If it tips the scale closer to 2.5 grams, take it seriously. Step 2. Let the coin's edge. If you don't see copper showing, just a clean silver stripe all around, you might be holding a mistake worth a fortune. This is what makes the 1965 dime so legendary. A moment in time when the mint was changing everything, and somehow, one little coin slipped through, carrying with it a six-figure secret. Next up, we're jumping to a dime from the 1950s that was accidentally struck with the wrong denominations. Die. A one-of-a-kind error that sent collectors into a frenzy. And hey, if this story just made you run to your change jar, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. There are still dimes on this list that will leave you absolutely stunned. And finally, we've come full circle right back to 1975. At first glance, this dime looks unremarkable. Worn, circulated. Roosevelt's hair is flat. The date is barely visible. Just another pocket coin, right? Wrong. Because if you're holding the right 1975 dime, even in poor condition, you could be staring at a piece of metal that's worth nearly $500,000. Let me explain. The year was 1975, and the US Mint had a plan. In honor of the upcoming bicentennial celebration, they produced special proof sets, collectible coins struck with extra care featuring 1975 dimes, quarters, and half dollars. But here's the twist. In those proof sets, the dime wasn't supposed to have a mint mark. That was standard for the San Francisco Mint that year.